In a twilit jungle, a clone trooper stumbled through alien undergrowth, crouched low to avoid being spotted. Neither sun nor stars were visible in the black sky above. The only light came from glowing pustules, purple and red, on the obsidian plant life that towered all around. The trooper's squad came to a halt, and the clones threw themselves down into the underbrush, waiting. Then, blaster bolts tore through the fog, burning blue, and the trooper flicked off the safety on his DC, preparing to return fire. Hello, and welcome to a new series we'll be trying out over the next couple of weeks. In this series, we're going to be looking back at some of the bloodiest battles in the history of the Star Wars galaxy for insights into the soldiers who fought and died in them, with the goal of understanding the worst day of these beings' lives, and in many cases, the last day of these beings' lives. Today, we're going to be starting with one of the Clone Wars' most infamous battles, the Battle of Umbara, and the horrors the 501st Legion experienced at its gruesome climax. At the beginning of the Clone Wars, Umbara was a loyalist world. Its Senator, Medici, was a leader of the Galactic Senate's militarist faction and an ardent supporter of the Republic's war against the Confederacy of Independent Systems. Some on his homeworld disagreed with these views, but Dici had the political power and charismatic authority to keep Umbara on the side of the Republic. But by 21 BBY, Senator Dici was assassinated and Umbara began to slip. Before long, separatist elements within the Rutai, the planet's governing caste, won out over the Loyalists, and Umbara seceded, throwing its weight behind the Confederacy. This was a major problem for the Republic. Umbara controlled traffic along the Great Kashyyyk Branch, one of the few reliable trade routes through the expansion region, and its secession threatened to cut off the Republic's supply lines to vital sectors in the Mid-Rim. To that end, in 21 BBY, the Republic prepared to retake Umbara by force. It mustered a vast invasion force, a fleet of warships, and a corps worth of clone troopers to take the planet, and it put this armada under the command of 4 Jedi generals: Obi-Wan Kenobi, Anakin Skywalker, Saesee Tiin, and Pong Krell. One of the GAR units assigned to the offensive was the 501st Legion, one of the Republic's most elite clone divisions. Commanded by General Skywalker and Clone Captain Rex, the 501st had proven its worth on battlefields across the galaxy, from Christosis to Felucia, often triumphing against long odds due to a mixture of skill, ingenuity, and plain old determination. General Skywalker encouraged his men to be independent and think outside of the box, and in large part because of this, his men became some of the most effective soldiers in the Republic. But the Battle of Umbara was a challenge greater than any the 501st Legion had faced before. Umbara was a twilit jungle world, a thoroughly alien environment that the men of the GAR weren't completely prepared for, and rather than facing hordes of unintelligent battle droids, the clones were up against the Umbarans themselves, who had a well-trained militia equipped with advanced alien technology that the Republic had never seen before. The 501st fought hard just to gain a few early footholds, and things got worse when, unexpectedly, General Skywalker was recalled to Coruscant. In his absence, the 501st came under the command of General Krell, who had a much different command style. Krell treated the men of the 501st like droids, sending them on suicidal charges and employing callous and poorly thought out tactics at every turn. In spite of their mistreatment and the general's terrible orders, the 501st managed to survive and eke out a couple of victories, using their ingenuity to win the day. This enraged Krell, who began ordering court-martials and executions for clones who showed initiative. When the men of the 501st refused to carry out these orders though, Krell seemingly brushed it off and dispatched the clones on a new mission instead. clone trooper stalked through the twilight jungle, making out what he could in the darkness and the fog. Spiky alien plants stabbed up through the fog all around, their obsidian black stalks speckled with splotches of bioluminescent red or purple. Alien critters scuttled through the underbrush as the 501st Legion advanced, crouched toward the ground, some carrying mortars on their backs. The trooper flicked his visor attachment down and activated night vision mode. The world lit up in shades of green, but the visor couldn't penetrate the fog, so the image wasn't all that clearer. The trooper's squad came to a halt, and the men wordlessly threw themselves to the ground. Two of the other troopers quietly began setting up a mortar. The trooper scanned the horizon, DC-15 carbine raised. He was on edge. He had been ever since word came through that the Umbarans were using clone armor and weapons. Then, blaster bolts tore through the fog, brilliant blue. One caught the trooper next to him, burning a hole in his chest, flinging his lifeless body to the ground. The trooper raised his blaster and returned fire, and a field of blue bolts lanced back into the fog, feeling blindly for targets. The rest of the squad opened fire as well, and mortars cracked to life, lobbing shells on ballistic trajectories high into the air. They crashed down in the distance with a sound like thunder, kicking up clouds of dirt. The trooper couldn't see the enemy. The fog was too thick, but he could guess well enough from the trajectories of the incoming bolts, and he did his best to return fire. Then, the fog broke a little, and at last, the trooper could see the enemy. They were clad in clone armor, white and orange, firing weapons identical to those the men of the 501st were using. For a moment, the sight gave the trooper pause. Then, anger swelled up within him, and he resumed fire, hungering to kill those who mocked his dead brothers by wearing their armor. His next salvo downed two of the enemy troopers, who fell with smoke trailing from flesh holes in their heads, while the others scattered, taking cover behind trees and other plant life. The trooper continued firing on them, shooting at whatever glimpse he could catch through the trees, becoming so focused on the enemy that he failed to notice as the blaster fire died down and the sound of exploding shells faded, replaced by the cries of clone voices, shouting words the trooper could not hear. But the enemy could make out what was being said, and they faltered, lowering their weapons and looking off to the side. The trooper barely even took notice. The enemy was distracted, after all, and that was the perfect time to strike. It wasn't until one of the enemy soldiers stepped out from cover that the trooper took pause, but only to wonder what had driven this Umbaran to suicide. The hesitation passed, and the trooper raised his blaster again, centering the enemy soldier's head in his reticle. Then, the soldiers reached up and pulled off his helmet, and the trooper's stomach seemed to drop out onto the forest floor. The face staring back at him through his carbine's reticle wasn't Umbaran at all. It was human, and it looked exactly like his own. General Krell had ordered both the 501st Legion and the 212th Attack Battalion to the same location with the same orders, warning them that the enemy was disguised as clones, thus engineering a brutal friendly fire incident on purpose. In the aftermath of this skirmish, the men of the 501st and 212th realized that General Krell was a traitor. On the orders of Captain Rex, they staged a mutiny, and after a fierce battle with the fallen Jedi, the clones managed to subdue and capture Krell. The general revealed that he had a vision suggesting that the Jedi would lose the Clone Wars, and that he had planned to cost the Republic the Battle of Umbara so that Dooku would accept him as an apprentice, which Krell believed would allow him to survive when the Jedi Order was destroyed. Krell was executed for his crimes, and shortly thereafter, the clones discovered that the Battle of Umbara was over. While they were busy taking down Krell, other Republic units had taken the Umbaran capital, and the Umbarans had surrendered. The battle ended in a Republic victory, but a costly one. Though the Republic was successful in taking Umbara, it lost many lives in doing so, along with an extensive amount of equipment. The Grand Army would be spread even more thinly across the galaxy in the wake of the casualties sustained on Umbara, making future battles even harder for the Republic's clone soldiers. The battle had inflicted similarly steep casualties on the Umbarans, whose cities had been turned to ruins and whose militia had been crushed by the Grand Army of the Republic. The battle was so devastating for morale, particularly for the men of the 501st, who had been through hell and were left questioning the GAR hierarchy, their place in it, and even the war itself. For many of those clones, the Battle of Umbara was the darkest chapter of the Clone Wars. But for the Republic, the battle was a victory. The casualties sustained to take Umbara were written off as acceptable losses, necessary to regain control over the Great Kashyyyk branch and improve the Republic's chances of winning the Clone Wars. The injustice of the invasion, the tremendous loss of life, the horror the survivors had to deal with, all of it was deemed an acceptable price for victory. That does it for this video. But what do you think? What do you think of this series so far? Let us know your thoughts in the comment section below. And as always guys, thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you in the next installment of this new series.